Welcome to this sketchbook tour. Got this cute, dinky little sketchbook. And if you're new to seeing my sketchbook tours, before I open it up, I just want to say this isn't one of those gorgeous sketchbooks that you see on the internet that every page you open it to is a masterpiece. This is a working document, so it's full of whatever I felt like doing at that particular point in time in this particular book with this kind of paper. So there's swatches, there's testing out ideas, as well as complete paintings. So this was a page I did quite late, and it was swatching a whole bunch of paints using this cute little swatch technique that Elise Abakin had talked about, and I thought it made for some interesting effects. In general, I leave the first page of my sketchbook till later. I don't know why, I guess I have this fear, like, if I do something blech here, it'll sour my feelings for the rest of the book, so so this was kind of late. This was actually the first page I did, and it was in August last year, which was 2021. Simone Michiels had made some new paints, and I love her paints, so I had acquired them. And this was me testing them out and making some notes for myself to look back on. This was paints I'd got from Chitara at Zenzo, who also makes handmade paints. I believe that she learned how to do that from Simone, and they both make extremely high quality paints. This was me practicing a mindful painting technique. I've actually got a Skillshare class about this. I'll put a link in. And it was filling a page with one or two colours using a little brush to take your time and get immersed. And these were other activities from that same mindful painting course. I think these were the ones I actually used in class, as well as my happy rainbows. And then this was a play page where I had some colours, and I started off just making little blobby marks with a brush, and then they became these colourful vines as I played with them. This started off as just a page of a single colour, and then later I came back to it and added the marks on top with a more opaque watercolour. This was an experiment. I've seen people do things where they put paint from a tube in kind of chunky blobs, and then they put water and let it run. So I thought I'd try it out with some of the tubes that I had at that point in time. And that was the result. Can't say that I particularly liked it, but I wanted to try it, so I did. This was swatching more paints from Chitara, and then I had this little bit of space left at the bottom, and I thought I would make a little sleepy fae creature. The model is my daughter, Momo. She's the model for a lot of my stuff. I love painting her. So yeah, this was one of my first kind of fae portraits of her, and that was back in September last year, 2021. After that little one, I went and painted a bigger fae portrait of her. Gave her big ears and little teeny horns. Then I painted, this is my mum, although she doesn't really, obviously she doesn't have horns, but the face, I exaggerated some of her features. I gave her kind of chubbier cheeks because I thought it would make for an interesting look. And I think I called this one Season of the Witch. This is another Fae portrait I did of my daughter. This time I was experimenting with more dramatic lighting, so really dark darks and really light highlights. And I gave her a gem for extra magic. This is another swatch page with colours from Chitara, Zenzo watercolours. This was a draw this or paint this in your style. So again, I took my daughter and created this sort of Mucha tarot-esque image. This one I did much later. If you've seen my other sketchbook tour, you'll know I am experimenting with trees often. I like to find different abstract ways of representing them. So this started out as blobs of colour that I then added the leaves to later. I got some new colours and swatched them. These are both Winsor & Newton ones. This is another Fae portrait. Started off with me wanting to experiment with this style of halo. It's in a Stephanie Law painting book that I have. She has a really interesting way of doing these kind of nimbus halos. Again, that's my daughter, and I gave her a big kind of glowy see-through wing as well. More swatching of Zenzo's paints with a little bit of Winsor & Newton down here. Then moved on to flowers. Flowers are really hard. So I spent a while trying to get into them because I like painting flowers, but painting flowers that look like the real thing can be quite tricky. It takes a long time. They're almost like portraits. They've got a lot of detail in them. This was me trying more abstract versions of flowers. Sometimes I like to paint things how they really look and then abstract them and see which I enjoy best. More flowers, and then this was practice with what it looks like to mess with the lights and the darks and how that changes how I perceive the shape of an object. So taking something that's flat, that's 2D, and then using highlights and shadows to give it form. And this was some of the experimentation I did in the run-up to the class that I made on layering for watercolours. And then more flowers. This was January this year, January 22. Flowers and leaves. Different stages of crocus flowers and a more simple magnolia. Then I finished with this. Momo and I had noticed that the sky sometimes does this thing where it'll go from yellow into blue without having green in the middle. So I wanted to experiment with painting that because it's quite tricky, right? Because if you put yellow on top of blue or blue on top of yellow, you get green. So this was me experimenting with representing what we saw in the sky one day. And this book, it's obviously a repurposed book, and I got it from the Sketchbook company, where they take old, no longer loved books and repurpose them into very pretty sketchbooks. So that's my sketchbook tour. I hope you found that interesting, and I'll speak to you soon.